trying to define the story, so story is basically the journey of your protagonist in particular time and space. And throughout the universe, throughout the world, there are n numbers of boundaries and the situations and activities continuously happening, and since the ages. But when you are trying to define your story, it means you will have to focus on a particular space and time. So when I say particular time and space, it means the story takes place in 1937 to 1938 at Uganda or Jerusalem or Africa or India or Indonesia or Japan. And it's the story of a Buddhist monk who gets married with a widow. So it's an example. So if you know that a Buddhist monk is going to get married, it means what can be the critical situation in which he is going to get married with a widow. So is it challenging? So initially, socially, it's a not acceptable concept, but then there is a story when there is some challenging content is there. So is it a love story, or is it a critical situation, or is it a realistic story, or is it a fiction? So story, the phase of the story, for 1 day or 1 year or 100 years or 1,000 years, you need to define. So what is the central event in the story, and what are the consequences of the story before the particular incidents happen and post incident of the story? So you need to understand, or you need to understand that what is a plot of your story. So you know the plot, then you must know what is the value of the plot and what can be created on that particular plot. You cannot compile so many ideas in a single plot unless it is not defined. You need to understand that the central event or the central conflict of the story should be well defined. So why Roman rulers put Jesus on the cross? Why Alexander returned from the India? Why Hitler killed himself? Or you should have n numbers of questions about your story, or about the issues, or about the historical facts. And similarly, you need to compare the fact or the realities in concern of your plot. Doesn't matter the plot or the story took place in the 15th century or the 2nd century or a 21st century or a 22nd century. So it may need that story goes on in the centuries and centuries, and from the one planet to another planet or in the galaxy. So in the particular space and time, if we define the series of events which has a central conflict, or the series of events in which there is one central event which has a high drama, So it can be a physical drama, it can be emotional drama. So when you are trying to tell the story, keep in mind that basically cinema is about entertainment. And the stories for the cinema should be very, very interesting elements in the concern of visuals. Because you are not going to listen the radio in the theater. So when we are trying to create a story for the movie, it means the activity and the action of the protagonist or the entire sequence in the story should be very, very well designed compilation of the visual experience that will have high dramatic values. So when the people who want to listen the story or want to experience the story, it means their mind is more excited about the complex situation in the life of protagonist. So it's about the struggle of the protagonist with the antagonist or the situation. Because every time antagonist is not necessary in the cinema, so many stories there is a situation becomes an antagonist. Because of the situation, hero has to suffer, his family or her family has to suffer. So it can be natural calamities, it can be environmental or something, it can be disaster, it can be poverty. So it's up to you that in your story whether the person is an antagonist or the situation is an antagonist. So why people are more interested about the stories in the different ways? Because somehow people want to get inspiration as well as a moral boost along with the entertainment. So pure entertainment doesn't mean that there should not be any moral stand or there should not be any social issues. So it's very important to understand what kind of a issue is involved into your story. So is it just a pure piece of art which has only entertainment, dance, music, romance, or if there is some sort of a national, international or a global or environmental issue? So understanding your complexity of the concept, you will have to develop the particular research and particular observation in that particular sphere. So stories are about the struggle of a male and the struggle of the female, and ultimately what happens to the male force and what happens to the female force, and ultimately how the particular force or a particular character or a particular protagonist achieves the goal in his or her life. You try to understand from the any successful films which you have liked, that how hero fights to achieve his goal or how the heroine achieves her goal in a critical situations. You must know whether your story is purely based on the protagonist that is a male or the protagonist that is a female. So every time, not necessarily that your film will be about a male or a man. You can also understand what is a cinema of feminism. And what is a important perspective in the stories of the women? Because man and woman equally divided in this universe, and they have the same emotions, the same conflicts, the same emotional conflicts, they have a same social values, and both the forces are having a struggle, particular struggle, specific struggle. And in the story you have to well define the struggle of that particular character. And that's why you will see in every second film there is a hero and heroine, or the male and female is there, and together they are having some sort of issue to handle. So what is the relation of the male and female? So they can be a mother and son, they can be husband and a wife, they can be a brother and a sister, they can be a teacher and a student, they can. You have to define that what will be the relation between the male and female force, and what is the goal of their particular struggle to achieve in a particular situation. So stories, whether it's a mythological story, it's a historical story, it's a contemporary story based on the reality, you will see there is a particular event, a particular conflict that is the center of your universe.